CNN has learned that the Trump White House has rescinded its freeze on federal aid. It comes after widespread confusion and conflicting messages on who would have been affected. Let's get right to CNN's Jeff Zeleny. Jeff, what are you hearing?
Boris, this is a dramatic and major reversal here at the White House, really encapsulating what has been a very confusing 40 hours or so. As you said, the White House, we are learning now, is ordering that this freeze on all programs be rescinded. We got word of this in yet another memorandum, not announced by the White House press secretary or any official, but simply in a one-page document that was sent across the government. It says this: it says Memorandum M-25-13, that was the memorandum signed Monday night, is rescinded. If you have any questions about implementing the president's executive orders, please contact your agency general counsel. That is it. But what we do know is the White House was facing considerable backlash about the question and the impact that the freezing of these programs was having across the country. I'm told that they were hearing from a variety of Republican lawmakers as well. A, they were caught off guard by this on Monday night and not given a heads up. And B, the White House yesterday tried to explain it as a media fabrication, that there was a controversy about this. The controversy was very real. In the lawmakers' offices, the lawmakers that we've been speaking with were saying that they were just hearing an earful from their constituents, much concern over grant funding, Head Start meals, etc. Yesterday at the White House briefing, the press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, said individuals would not be affected. Perhaps that was so, but there was so much confusion about this. And of course, last night, a judge stepped in and temporarily blocked this, putting it on hold until Monday. But then today, the White House comes in and says, we're rescinding all of this. So this is definitely going to be something to unwind, figure out what happened. But there's no question, this is the biggest speed bump, if you will, in the first 9 days of the Trump administration. And we're getting some reaction. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine is praising the White House's decision here. She said that every administration has the ability to review programs, which was ostensibly the reason for the Trump freeze in the first place. But she called it overreaching, and she said it created unnecessary confusion and consternation. So this now is essentially rescinded. We do not know if they will try and streamline this order a little bit to review these programs, but certainly a major reversal here at the White House. This is coming just shortly before the president will be signing his first law into office, the Laken-Riley Act. We will see if he talks about it at that point. But again, no explanation from the White House aside from that one-sentence memo from the Office of Management and Budget. But this controversy we've been talking about for the last 2 days suddenly has been rescinded, and things are back to normal.
That's right. All right. No, a lot of questions around it. As you said, we will have to unwind it. Jeff Zeleny there at the White House, thank you so much. We've got Jackie Kucinich here and Mark Preston. Jackie, I am struck by the fact that the rescinding of this order came much like the original one did, which was by surprise.
Right, and I think you heard during that hearing, maybe some members didn't quite know that this had happened yet. But listen, as much as the White House tried to say, oh, it's all in the letter, look at the letter tells you everything, it didn't. And I can tell you why. Members of Congress were telling us they're getting called incoming from constituents and not being able to explain to them what's open, what's closed. I mean, there were questions about Meals on Wheels, Head Start, like Jeff said. I mean, really, it ran the gamut. And the fact that they had to rescind it because they couldn't point to which exact programs would not be implicated really tells you exactly why this happened, because it wasn't going away.
There's going to be no political fallout, right? I mean, the fact is we're going to see this over the coming days, over the coming weeks, over the coming months, that Donald Trump is going to try to do these big major things. A lot of them are not going to work because they're unconstitutional, or he just doesn't have the absolute power to do so. But we've seen that with him offering folks like 8 months of pay.
Buyouts, yes.
A buyout to the whole federal government. I mean, that's insane.
Well, and we still don't know what's happening with foreign assistance. That continues to be frozen at this point.
Right, and he's going to continue to do this, and his supporters are still going to back him, and there's going to be no political fallout, and that's the reality. We are in a new world now until things get really bad for people, and then it's really going to affect them.
I do think it's interesting you didn't hear a lot of Republicans speak out against him yesterday. There was a lot of like,
a lot of
it's
people were
fine,
defending it.
it's chill, it's good, like just wait, it'll work itself out. This happens all the time. But based on what Jeff was saying, behind the scenes, I think they were getting some calls at the White House from Republicans and Democrats alike.
It's telling to me, and fascinating, that this so much echoes the first Trump administration, his first term, when in the early days of his tenure, he put out the Muslim ban that then wound up getting struck down by the courts. He put out, I think, 3 or maybe 4 versions before it finally sort of went through because it had to be revised so many times. But it speaks to this view of the executive that is aggressive and autocratic, some would say.
Look, we talk a lot about, and we've talked about it on the show, we've talked a lot about what our founding fathers wanted. They wanted 3 co-equal branches of government so that someone get a little bit too big for their britches, right? Well, guess what? We're in a situation right now where Republicans own all 3 branches of government, and what is even more scary about that, and I would say the same thing about the Democrats if they had all 3 branches of government. What is really scary about that is that there is no pushback right now from Republicans on Capitol Hill to just about anything that he is doing. As Jackie was saying, everything was fine. People are, oh, it's okay. Like, they didn't come out and criticize him at all when they should have. But that's because they all fear him.
And backlash from their constituents, frankly, that support him.
100%.
Yeah, and in this case, that seems to be what drove it. Now, that's not stopping Democrats from taking credit for killing this, but they didn't really have a message on this.
I mean, you could see that the press conference where Chuck Schumer and several other senators came out front on this was actually about, I think, January 6th pardons initially, and they turned it into about this issue because of the news. And I think House Democrats were going to meet this afternoon.
Yes, for I think an emergency meeting, but it was very delayed.
So exactly. Yes. So I think, I mean, they're welcome to take credit, but I think it was probably the backlash internally from Republicans and from their own constituents that moved the needle here.
And let's be very clear. This was just the first shot across the bow. They're going back to every one of these programs, and there are going to be a lot of these programs that will get sacrificed. And then we also have to realize, guess what? Donald Trump did win. Like, he did get a majority, of the folks to support him. So that's the situation for the next couple of years. Democrats have got to learn how to fight back. And I will tell you, just watching that Kennedy hearing today, I think that some of them did a pretty good job. But I will tell you, overall, their attack strategy on Robert F. Kennedy was not very good.
And it shouldn't be surprising that this is an administration that takes a very expansive look at the executive branch and executive powers. And I think lawyers are going to be a very lucrative profession in this term, and you're going to see this again and again ahead of judges as outside groups try to push back over some of the things that they would consider overreach by this administration.
We actually want to go back to the White House now. Jeff Zeleny is there, and he just got a statement from Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt on this rescinding of the freeze on federal grants and loans. What are you hearing?
Boris, we are hearing the first official reaction and somewhat of an explanation on this rescission that we were talking about a few moments ago. Let's read this together. I'm not sure there's clarity at the end of this, but we will talk about it. But the White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, just a few moments ago, sending out this, she said, "This is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion," she writes, "created by the court's injunction. The president's executive orders on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented." So if that was not already a bit of a confusing 40 hours or so, I think this has only added to that. So clearly the White House press secretary in a defensive explanatory mode there, saying that they are still going to commit to the president's executive orders, which that is what he signed last week, saying that he wants to approve any new spending and existing spending in foreign aid and diversity, equity, and inclusion money and the like. What is less clear is if this instructive to freeze all programs, what the status of that is. So we will have to get more of a deeper understanding of this. But her reference there to the judge's order from last night, that is a federal judge shortly before 5 o'clock when this freeze was intended to take effect, stepped in and temporarily halted this and said this sweeping language is potentially problematic. So put a pause on that. So the White House seeking to add clarity. We'll see what the White House counsel's office says. But for now, at least, the point being, these programs are not frozen, But again, this White House, this is the biggest example yet. Some questions of the ability to govern and competence certainly coming to the fore in this case. Boris and Jessica?
It certainly is. Jeff Zeleny, maybe we'll have another update.
We'll have more clarity on the clarifying statement.
Yeah, this is still, look, we're all still sorting through this. Okay, Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much for that reporting.